Welcome to Hometown Heroes. This is Rick Irving with my co-host Mary Staffeld, and today we have the honor and privilege of having a longtime friend and a frequent guest on Hometown Heroes, Mr. Doug Petersen. And Doug is an Army veteran, a helicopter pilot, and an author. And he has just released a new book, and here's a picture of the cover, and it's called Sign Dustoff 34, Hovering Between Life and Death.
You notice, Rick, that his face looks exactly the same. Have you noticed that? Every picture, he looks exactly the same.
He didn't, well, he's got a little
The hair.
His part's a little wider than it was back then.
Yeah. Holy cow.
But Mary and I had the privilege of receiving a book from you, and this weekend we both read it. And even though we have had you on several times on the podcast, it just really went in a lot deeper to the operations of a Dustoff pilot in Vietnam. So, Doug, welcome to Hometown Heroes.
Well, thanks, Rick and Mary, for having me again. I certainly do enjoy these opportunities to share a little bit about my story.
Well, your story is remarkable. And, I was thinking a while ago before I set the podcast up about those hats that veterans wear. And we as veterans don't wear those hats to attract attention from people. We wear those so we can attract other veterans. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting here today, and I've told this story before, because you and I were in Dallas at a Carry the Loads 5 or 6 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
And I was walking, and I saw this hat, and it said Dustoff on the back. And I thought, I need to talk to that guy. And I stopped and talked to you, found out you lived in Benbrook, invited you to roll call, and you've been an integral part of roll call in our life since then. So I'm glad you wore that hat that day.
Yeah, I am too, and it was. I'm glad that you approached me and we had that conversation. I would have never known to come up and chat with you, but I'm glad you saw that. Yeah, I wear the hat to not so much for others to see who I am necessarily, but to connect with other veterans. I'll have other Dustoff crew members or medics or someone that we picked up from the jungles of Vietnam or wherever, and say, hey, I know what Dustoff is, and so it's a way to connect and bond with fellow veterans, and that's really what the
because
reason.
Not everybody knows what Dustoff is,
right?
So let's get into the life of a Dustoff pilot. Call sign 34, Dustoff 34. And we've talked about in previous episodes about how you got into the Army and, you went to military school, then joined the Army, and when you became a pilot, mm-hmm. and you were going to be a gunship pilot.
Yeah.
Surprise! The Army would never surprise you.
No, never like that.
You were a trained gunship pilot.
Right. I was trained.
And you stepped off that airplane in Vietnam thinking you were going to be a gunship pilot. But things change.
Things change for the better.
So tell us about Dustoff and what you did in Vietnam.
Well, Dustoff is the call sign for the medical evacuation, or for the Army's medical evacuation helicopter units. They didn't get that call sign until Vietnam, and that call sign has lived on from that point forward to where even today they use the call sign for Dustoff. But they were naming missions for these helicopters during the war, early part of the war, like maybe 1963. And it came up to a call sign for this mission that they were given was called Dustoff. Now, there's some rumors that it was going to be a dry landing zone and that's going to kick up all these dust, and that I don't know the validity of any of that, and I certainly don't put that in the book as any factual tidbit. But the point is that Dustoff was the call sign or the nomenclature for this one particular mission. The commander then in Vietnam said, that's going to be our call sign from now on. All missions from this point forward are now going to be called Dustoff, and we were going to be using the Dustoff call sign. So that's how Dustoff came about. Now, my call sign Dustoff 34 was we had 4 platoon in our unit. Now, this is not necessarily the other units the way they did it, but our unit, the 45th Med Company, we had 4 platoons, and pilots in the first platoon had call signs of Dustoff 12 or Dustoff 17, whatever the call sign. So I was in the 3rd platoon. So when I became an aircraft commander, and you don't get a call sign until you're an aircraft commander, then I was then from that point forward Dustoff 34 until I left country. So that's how Dustoff 34 came about.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dust. You don't raise a lot of dust whenever you're in a rice paddy, do you?
No, there's not a lot of dust out there.
You write in your book, and you said you write about one of the most traumatic times and yet one of the most meaningful times in your life.
Yeah.
A 22-year-old kid that goes to war and sees things that you can't ever unsee.
Right.
But then you have the satisfaction that at that wall in Vietnam, there would be a lot more names up there if it wasn't for the Dustoff guys.
Well, you're right. I think so. I say that in the book only to say that, I am 21, the average age of the pilots there, because we had the high school to flight school program, the average age was, they weren't college graduates. So we were probably 20 years old on average going to flight school, and you're between 20 and 21. I just happened to have that time in a semester in college where I ended up being 22 when I graduated from flight school. But they're still so young, and depending on wherever you grew up, I don't know that I was ready for all the trauma that we were going to be exposed to. The people that we picked up, the patients we picked up, you can only imagine. You can see it in the movies today, the gore and that kind of thing, and that's horrible to see as a 20-year-old or 22-year-old. So that, like I say in the book, it's the most traumatic time that I have ever experienced, but it's also the most rewarding time because, just like you said, there's a name that's not on the wall because of something that myself and my crew did. And that's what that's the reason I made that statement, is that it is such a rewarding mission to go through that. What we don't see in the movies, and we really can't, it's just not necessarily just the visual of the trauma that we load onto the aircraft. It's also the smell. The smell is something that you just can't get away from, and it permeates the aircraft. When we finish missions, the deck of that Huey is covered with blood, and there's an iron smell to blood, like that volume of blood that's all over the deck in that Huey. And we would get out there, and the way the crew chief and the medics and some occasionally pilots would get out there to help clean, we use hydrogen peroxide, like by the gallon. And it would that's what we use to wash down the decks, just to get it cleaned up. That's that kind of aspect. You you can't explain because it, I mean, even just trying to do it here on the podcast, it's hard to visualize, but there is something that's very traumatic to that. But again, we're there to save lives. And that's what our mission was to expedite the wounded from the field to a medical facility of some sort as quickly and as safely as we could.
And probably most of the missions, there was somebody out there trying to kill you.
Yeah, and that was hard for me to figure out.
Why would they want to kill me? But I mean, there was guys with.
What did I do to them?
There was guys with guns and RPGs and.
Yeah, that was something that we couldn't. I mean, as a young kid, and I still say kid, 22. Someone was trying to shoot me, and I wasn't taking it personally. I just didn't understand. I'm not shooting at them. Why are you shooting at me? And obviously, after the second time I got shot down, it probably I got figured out that they were trying to kill me. But maybe it may have taken that long. I don't know.
Something about that Red Cross they didn't take too seriously, right? I know
No.
when I was reading in your book where you said 1 out of 3 missions I flew, I could be killed or wounded. And then you say your loss ratio for Dustoff, medics, and crew chiefs was 33%.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. The statistics would support that. It's just the number of missions and the number of wounded crew members. Just the statistics of that. I mean, of the 1,400 pilots that were there during the 11 years, that 1,400 pilots was over an 11-year period. I think I say in the book there was 90 that were killed and 208 were injured in some way or another. I mean, those numbers are crazy. And then the same thing with the crew chiefs and the medics. They suffered just as much as the pilots did. So yeah. So the risk was extreme, and we're out there single ship, and I try to make that very clear. We're out there by ourselves for the most part.
Not following SOP whenever you're.
Notice there was a number of times in the book where SOPs were not followed, and I know we've heard that before, but that's war. I mean,
you're supposed to have a gunship with you when you're doing those penetrations.
Yeah. So, the SOP is what it is.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do to save those lives. And
it was like the Bob Hope story.
Mm-hmm.
I had to. Hey, what's more important, getting a slap on the wrist for flying over Bob Hope or saving somebody's life?
But as you said, you did make it into the video.
Yeah, I was on the Bob Hope show.
Just saying.
So the platoon, you had a first up, second up, and third up.
Mm-hmm.
And first up took the first mission, second up would be on standby, another mission. So you didn't always get a lot of rest because you were doing 7 days a week.
Right. Well, the first, second, and third up, that was only in Long Bend. Since we had, in the majority of the aircraft, when we had the standby missions that we flew out at those different locations that I explained, those are only single ship that are out there. So their first, second, and third up would only be there in Long Bend and covering the area around that area, or even encroaching on some of the other standby locations. But you'd be. We didn't have beepers or anything, so there was this really, really loud clacker horn that they would hit that would launch us. And the mess hall was like, I don't know, 200 yards, 300 yards away from the flight line. And it never fails. You finally get your meal and you're getting ready to sit down and eat, and that clacker goes off, and off you go, and you got to be up in the air in 2 minutes. So it's just the way it was. I mean, sometimes you got to eat and sometimes you didn't, and that's okay. I didn't starve.
You explained real well about whenever you go out on the mission and run out to the helicopter, the crew chief was untying the blade, and then the medic was doing some work, and the co-pilot was in there, and he was starting to get everything going, and then you'd put your body armor on, and you'd get in, and then you'd start doing your part, and you'd be off the ground in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that seems like a short time.
Yeah.
But whenever you see those guys operating and doing all that stuff, they do it pretty quickly. And I hope that, from my experience in flying in the back of a helicopter, I hope they were doing everything right. We never crashed, so. But they would be calling things out and flipping switches, and there's a million switches in that helicopter.
Yeah. Well, that was the good teamwork that you had with a good flight crew that you flew with. Now, we didn't fly with the same guys all the time. So the aircraft commander would, make it clear when we did the briefing for the day. We would say, okay, crew chief, your job is to untie the blades, get them swung 90 degrees, get this ready. Co-pilot, you're going to jump in the right seat. Don't worry about your vest or your armor. We'll get that later. I want you to start the helicopter. So he hits the battery switch and cranks it and gets the blades going. The aircraft commander has got the mission and he's running out, but he's putting on the chicken plate and his survival vest. He climbs in, buckles up, finishes taking over the run up. So he gets as he's strapped in, then the co-pilot then finishes getting dressed, so to speak, with his stuff, and the co-pilot and the crew chief and the medic are just ready to go. And they're getting things organized in the back. And so off we go. And it's pretty quick, but you do it. We did it so often that it was just second nature.
And you close your eyes.
Chicken plate.
Huh?
You mentioned chicken plate in the book too, and I'm like, what is chicken plate?
It's the armor vest. It's a bulletproof vest.
Ah.
But it's only on the front. The pilots only wore chicken plate on the front. So it weighed probably about 25 pounds. It was real thick, but there was nothing in the back because we were sitting in seats that were armor plated. So we didn't need the plate in the back. So we would put that over top of the flight suit, and then we would put our survival vest on top of that. But now the crew chief and the medic, sometimes if they didn't wear theirs, they would sit on theirs because we didn't, as I mentioned in the book, that we didn't use that chair.
They didn't have armor-plated seats back there.
There's no armor-plated.
They did sit on the floor a lot of times.
Yeah, that's where they sat, and they would sit on their chicken plates usually.
Just don't want to get a bullet up the bottom.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty smart.
Yeah. But you think about that whenever the helicopter starts, and that noise, and then it just starts slowly spinning, and I mean you can close your eyes, and I close my eyes, and just hear that starting, and there's nothing like that burning JP4.
Oh yeah.
To smell that, it's just I can smell it even today, and it brings back memories of those days.
Yeah, those were the days.
So as you ran to the helicopter, you're starting the helicopter. Have you already got your information on where you're going?
Yeah, we already had the coordinates and the call sign and the frequency for the ground troops. What the mission was, how many injured, were they U.S., were they allies, were the Vietnamese? We already had that information. The aircraft commander would pick that up at the flight ops. That's the reason he wasn't at the helicopter first, is that he was getting the mission sheet that was handed to him with that information on it. And
Then
so,
you ride on the windscreen.
well, we did that when we were in the air. We would, if we've got more missions. See, when we had the remote sites, we didn't have a mission control body there. We would get them over the radio. And when we were flying, we would pick up more missions. And that's what I mentioned in the book, is that in the picture that I included, you can see the grease pencil where we had written across the windscreen the next mission, and the next mission, and so forth. And we would just then clean them off as we had done them. But in these remote sites, you had no other support other than you. You were it. I mean, there was a U.S. Radio guy, but he wasn't assigned to your unit. We didn't have any of those guys out there with us, so we were out there pretty much by ourselves. So
and you mentioned a while ago, they'd tell you if it was a U.S. soldier, an Allied soldier, a Vietnamese or whatever, a civilian. But one of the priorities you had was the dogs.
Yeah, those were a high priority. U.S. was a priority one, so they were first, period. And then priority two was the Allied forces. That would be the South Koreans, the Australians, New Zealanders, and so forth. Then priority three would be the Vietnamese Army, the ARVNs, and priority four was civilians. So we had those four, but below one, between one and two, was scout dogs, and it's a 1A is for lack of a better priority number. 1A was a scout dog because they were truly mission critical to those guys that were on the ground. I mean, they were sniffing out the enemy, they were sniffing out booby traps, and so they were super critical. And that's the one mission that I talk about where I got to hoist out a scout dog because he had been shot. And we had to get him to a veterinary clinic for treatment. So, yeah, it was mission critical for those guys.
And you hoisted him out, didn't you?
Yeah, we hoisted the dog and the handler at the same time because there was no way to put the dog on a jungle penetrator. And so we figured out that the handler could sit on the jungle penetrator and then cradle the dog. It was a big German Shepherd. Cradle the dog as we brought them up and put them in the helicopter.
But those dogs are so accustomed to all the stuff going on until they don't get real excited, do they? I mean,
well, we didn't know that. I mean, we didn't know how this dog was going to react. When you got a big, loud helicopter, he's flying above the ground. He's been shot. He's not happy, so we just didn't know what kind of reaction we were going to have with this dog. But as it turned out, I mean, the dog was pretty docile in the back with the handler with no issues.
Yeah, they're usually pretty good when they're with their handlers. I think that's so key because of that relationship they have. So it probably soothed the dog to be there with the handler. Yeah.
It was funny, and I said this as we were talking about that mission. We have our Vietnam Dustoff Association reunions every year, and I was talking to one of the crew chiefs. His name is Tom Hall, and I put his name in the book. And it was at our last reunion down in San Antonio, and it's the first time I'd seen Tom, obviously in 55 years, because he hadn't been to the other reunions. And so we were talking, and he said something about hoisting out a scout dog, and I said, "Hey, that was my guy. That was my mission." And so we got to chat about that. And that's what these reunions, and I say this in the book, that, I don't remember a lot of the guys that I flew with. I don't remember their names. I don't remember the crew chiefs and medics or whatever on any particular mission. I mean, I could remember that I flew with, this guy or that guy, but I don't remember specifics. And it's only when we get to these reunions and we started talking about different kinds of missions and that we're on, that we say, well, that sounds exactly familiar. I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's a historian, his name is Scott Woodard, down in Fort Sam Houston, and he's a historian, and he's doing stories about Dustoff in Vietnam. And
Cool.
so he interviewed all of us. He's been doing that for like the last 3 or 4 years. And so he'll do 2 hours with one guy, and he'll just have them tell them their story. And so then Scott just says he was doing one guy, and then a couple hours later he was doing somebody else, and he said he's talking about the exact same mission, and the two did not remember that they were together.
Wow.
And so we got to, that's what the good things about some of these reunions. It's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now tell us, there were some remote bases that you would go to about every 10 days or so.
Right.
And each base kind of had different terrain around it.
Right.
So you had to learn how to fly and land in different terrains too.
Well, most of all our area, with the exception of the area out to the east of Saigon, which was in the Swan Lock area, most of the other areas were flat for the most part. There weren't any mountains per se. So we didn't really need to worry about mountain flying. We had hoist missions here and there, but the Tan Am, that was down in the deltas. I mean, that's all perfectly flat as a pancake. And so you could fly at 5 feet all day long and, jump over a palm tree once in a while, but it was pretty flat down that way. Tan Am was very similar. It was pretty flat with it had some jungle area. Nui Dat was pretty much jungle, but it was not a lot of rice paddies. It was pretty much jungle, but it was, flat terrain. There was no mountains that we needed to really worry about. There was a few hills here and there, but nothing severe. Swan Lock is where it was super jungle, triple canopy, thick jungle, and that's where almost every mission out in the Swan Lock area was a hoist mission.
And whenever you fly there at night, it was completely dark.
It was darker than I can tell you. It was, I mean, you cannot imagine how dark it was, because there were no villages, there's no outside lights, and you got these guys that are signaling their positions with parachute flares, and that would light up something where you could see, but it was dark. And some of the guys will tell stories that they found pickup zones when the guy on the ground was using a Zippo lighter. I mean, it's so dark that a Zippo lighter was enough light to see where they were. That's crazy.
And during the day, they'd usually pop smoke to let you know.
Yeah.
And just explain the way that they would do that, because you would be in radio contact with them.
Right.
But, anybody could pop smoke, but you
Right.
had different colors.
Right. So what we would do is we would when we got into the vicinity, now we're still up at 2,000 feet or 1,500 feet above the ground, and we'd get a guy on the radio that has where the patient is, and we'd tell them to pop smoke. And then once in a while, inexperienced guy, they say, "Oh, I'm throwing yellow smoke." And I said, "Well, don't do that." Mm-hmm. And we'd explain, it says, "Okay, the reason you just throw a smoke and we'll tell you what color we see, because if the bad guy is listening on the radio, the same radio frequency, and he can speak English, then he says, oh, let's throw yellow smoke like the other guy did." And so they're going to throw yellow smoke, and you got 2 yellow smokes sitting out there. Well, which one's the good guy and which one's the bad guy? Well, it's hard to tell. So we would make it very clear when we call the guy on the radio, say, okay, throw smoke, but don't tell us what color it is. We'll identify the color. Well, back in the late 60s, Kool-Aid drink at commercials back in the day, and they named their flavors. And so it was Lefty Lemon, Goofy Grape, Choo Choo Cherry, and so forth. And so that's what we would say. We see Choo Choo Cherry, meaning that we see red smoke. And then they would understand what we were talking about. So, yeah. Now, the smoke in the jungles was a little more tricky because it wasn't, we had to wait for it to filtrate up through the top because we couldn't see down through it very well. So, and it dissipates pretty quickly. So you really have to identify the exact location of where they are. And that was a bit of a challenge with that mission that I described where I was shot down again, is because the terrain looked similar to where I thought the smoke was. And it was only maybe 100 meters away, but still that was 100 meters away from between good guys and bad guys. So, yeah, the smoke, that was really the only, during the daytime, that was about the only way to identify pickup locations and such.
And people have to remember this was a long time ago before they had GPS and all the coordinates and everything. So you were flying off a grid map, weren't you?
Yeah, you were given a map, a series of maps, and you'd scotch tape them together, and then you would draw the grid lines on them because we would use grid coordinates rather than any latitude and longitude. We didn't even know how that worked. Anyway, so we would do grid lines, and so there would be, Yankee Tango was this really big, large block of area on the map, and then you would then get 6-digit coordinates to bring it down to maybe 100 meters or so you can get in the location. And you got so attuned to the area of operation that toward the end, the mission came in and said it was X-ray Sierra, blah, 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 blah. I didn't even have to look at the map. I mean, I knew the direction to go to get started in that direction because we just flew the area so much and knew the grid structure so well that we could just about fly to within a few kilometers anyway of where the pickup zone was. And then we'd look at the map and fine tune exactly where we needed to.
In the daytime, you had plenty of light to see everything, but at night, how did you do all that? Because both of the pilot and co-pilot, both having to really concentrate on where you're going, and complete darkness out there. But you had the grid map on your lap, trying to find out where you're going to go.
Well, you would have. Talking out in Swan Lock area, that we had G-Ray Mountain, which I make reference to in the book. G-Ray Mountain was a pretty big mountain. I mean, I say it's a good mountain. It's probably 1,500 feet high, but it's just a little pinnacle. It's just sitting there by itself. There's no mountain range or anything associated with it. It's just a big old pinnacle sitting out, coming out of the ground. So if you knew where that was, and you could see that on the grid, and then you could pretty much guess from that point forward about where it was, you weren't going to get real close. And that's why at night we would have them pop a parachute flare so that we could see where they are, or shoot a pen flare or something up so we can see where they were. They usually didn't like to do that because they would broadcast their position. But I mean, we had a mission to do, and that was to get those guys out. And
you would turn your lights off, the little lights that flash to.
Yeah, we our external lights, the navigation lights, the red and green on each side, the tail, the white tail light, the rotating beacon, all of those were off. We couldn't have those on when
just going there dark.
We started to come out of altitude. Yeah.
And there was one time that you talked about you're coming down and you had another helicopter or something, and you had them. They were going to turn their lights on so you could see better.
Well, what a learning exercise that was. I learned real quick that was not a good idea. When you're down, because we have this in the Huey, we call it the greenhouse. There's a green plexiglass above the head, and when that Xeon searchlight hit my helicopter, the entire inside was green, and we lost all visual reference outside. We just couldn't see a thing outside. And our night vision, which we had now, was really good out there because it was so dark. Our night vision was really good. And when that light came on, man, it just did us a number. And fortunately, he was quick with the switch, turn it off. Because you're sitting down there maybe at 10 or 15 feet above the jungle, and now you can't see anything outside to keep it at that altitude. You don't know what the aircraft's doing.
But
and when you say night vision, you mean the vision with these, not like today we have the night vision goggles.
No, not night vision goggles. No, the eyeball.
That would have been easy if you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Would you turn your landing lights on sometime so you could see, or you just go in dark?
I can't say that we never did. I don't. Sometimes we would put a landing light on. Maybe I don't remember whether we did or not, but I don't have a good answer for you. We may have.
You got shot down a couple of times, or
twice. First time I don't remember a whole lot about it. I was too new. I was one of the new guys. So I was oblivious to what's going on. I'm just doing what the aircraft commander told me to do. And he said, grab that radio and run to that helicopter and get in, and we'll go home.
So y'all abandoned your helicopter and.
Yeah. Well, we had troops that would come around and secure it until a Chinook would come in and pick it up, and then they would pick it up. I don't think I was in the 2 times that I was shot down. The aircraft wasn't damaged enough to just leave it. It was repairable, and so we would then go out and pick it up, and they would come out and pick it up.
AAA would show up.
Yeah, AAA would come in, hook up the tow truck, and drag it out of there.
Were there some times whenever either your co-pilot or your crew chief or medic got shot?
I did not have any of my crew injured on the missions that I flew.
That's good.
Yeah, I was lucky. Not that we didn't. That second time that we were shot down, we took 25 hits. We counted 25 bullet holes in the aircraft, but none of us received any injuries as a result.
And did you just have a real hard landing, or?
Well, it was pretty controlled. I don't think it was. I wanted to get it on the ground before the engine quit, because once the engine quits, you're pretty limited on where you're going.
Because you're flying pretty low, so it's not like you got a long time to auto rotate or anything.
Yeah, there wasn't a real good auto rotation area to work with.
Then you've got to pick out a site where you're going to try to aim to land.
Yeah, and it was pretty jungle. It was clear enough for us to get a helicopter into it. It was about 2 kilometers away from where we were doing the hoist mission. And so we had the good guys come around and surround us pretty quick. So we felt relatively secure.
Is there any time whenever you were going down in the jungle that you kind of trimmed some trees?
Oh, yeah. as I say in the book, the rotor blades on a Huey are not good weed whackers.
Yeah.
And they just will get torn up. I mean, we'd rip blades. If you hit a tree that was about maybe an inch in diameter, which is not much, the honeycomb and thin skid on a Huey's rotor blade, that's going to rip that one up. And now it's going to be the rotor blades are going to be out of balance, and you're going to get a lot of shaking and a lot of bouncing around, and it's not really repairable. You have to replace the blade once it gets back to the home base. But yeah, they don't. Now there's a good leading edge that will get some of it, but the bottom and the top and the trailing edge of the blades are thin skinned, and it's all honeycomb underneath it, so there's no real good protection.
Not a lot of good structure in there. I mean, it's.
Yeah, and bullets will go right through it, like nothing. A BB would go through it, I think. So, but yeah, the stories that I tell are stories that I share when I give presentations to groups, and as I had previously mentioned, there are a couple of stories in there that I can't get through to share in presentations. It was difficult to write about, but it's something that I've tried once in a while. I'll try to talk about that mission, and I just can't get through it, and that's okay. I don't feel bad about it. It was what it was, but I think the writing this book, in which I've really hesitated for so many years to do it because I didn't think anybody would find it interesting, but I found it somewhat helpful for me to get it down. I had put into some notes and outline that if I were ever to write one, don't forget about this mission, don't forget about the lobster tails, don't forget about this, and don't forget about that. And so I would write this long list of tidbits, and then switch them around and get them in chronological order as best I could, and that's the basis of the book. And that's how I wrote the book, is taking those tidbits that I had remembered from a long time ago. And that was 55 years ago. Yeah. I mean, my memory is not that great to remember all the details. And then, I say that at the beginning of the book. I'm not going to add a lot of fluff to this thing, just to add pages.
I don't think fluff is what you called it.
No, I didn't call it fluff, but I didn't want to just put in crap.
Yeah.
That had no basis of factual stuff. I mean, I was making it very succinct, and that's why the page that's only 80 or 90 pages, and it's a good afternoon read maybe. I didn't need it to be 300 pages.
No. You told the story very succinctly, and you got the story out there, and I don't think it has to be long. I think it just needs to be what you need it to be and what the story was. Because you talk about the golden hour, and how many people even know what the golden hour is? Because it's things like that. Mm-hmm. That's an impactful thing to think about. How many lives you saved because of that one thing, that golden hour.
Yeah, and that's what we all strove for. That was it, to do that.
Yeah.
And if we could do that, then we had a very, very high percentage of survivability.
Yeah, and I think somewhere in there you said that you guys got it down to about 50 minutes. A lot of times you could get them there from the time you got that call to the time you got them there. You got them there in 50 minutes. You even got better than the golden hour.
But in some of the locations, they would have a medical facility that was not the size of the hospitals that we would go to periodically, but large enough medical facility where they could get their urgent care and get stabilized. And then after they were stabilized, we would then take them again after their surgeons have done the best that they can. We would then transport them back up to the major hospitals, the two major hospitals up there in Long Binh or Saigon. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty impressive to think about the number of lives. And I think you made that point so well in the book, the number of lives. And then when you talk about it, and I've heard you say this a number of times, it's not just those lives, it's the lives that are here today because of those lives.
Right.
And you know, one thing that struck me, and I highlighted it because I thought, in your dedication, you say, my best was not good enough. I tried my best to avoid having your name etched on the memorial, but my best was not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I think your best was absolutely good enough because you saved a lot of lives. And there's a lot of people that have those, as Don Graves likes to talk about, those many more tomorrows, mm-hmm. because of the person that you saved or your team saved, who then went on to do, you know, they may have done some amazing things once they came home, invented things, mm-hmm. created things. Mm-hmm. They had family members who then could go on to create things, and maybe they're going to cure cancer. You don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I think your best was pretty darn good.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, that dedication just came to me, and that's what, yeah. I mean, it was, I didn't think through that. I thought through that, but it was just, I didn't have to think very long of what the dedication was going to be. Right. I just had to get the words down to what it was going to be. I just knew I was going to dedicate it to the names on the wall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's amazing all the lives you saved. It's just amazing.
I've got some questions for you about the fear. Whenever you were going to Vietnam, you probably had a little anxiety, a little fear of what might be out there. Did you have that as you were going out there, or were you just ready to go?
You know, when I started to go, when I was enlisting to come into the high school to flight school program, I had to go before a board of officers at Fort Lee, Virginia. And so I went up to Fort Lee, and it was before this board, and they were asking me questions, and I don't remember. It says, well, you do know where you're going after flight school. And I said, yeah. I said, okay. Yeah. Hit the road, get on the bus. You're going to, you know, I mean, I don't know that, I'm not saying that I didn't, I just don't recall any anxiety.
But then at that time, you still thought, you didn't know you were going to be Dustoff until you got there.
I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I was just hoping to go to flight school and fly helicopters.
Yeah.
That was my thing, was I wanted to fly a helicopter. Now, I didn't know anything about the missions. I didn't know what they did. I saw movies and news pieces on helicopter people, and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to go be a pilot.
But then you went through school to be a gunship. Like you were ready to go shoot some people.
Yeah, I was
bad guys.
Blow up South Vietnam. I was good.
I bet you were pretty good.
And then surprise, surprise.
Hello. Yeah, no, you're not a gunship guy. You're a dust-off guy.
Maybe some of that training helped you land a little different than you would have. Some of that hot shot stuff.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
You talked about flaring kind of sideways to land. You kind of had to learn that, didn't you?
Yeah, that wasn't school solution. They didn't teach you that in flight school. You come in fast, and you typically would flare the helicopter, so it would slow down. Well, you can't get that tail rotor down too low, and so you can't dip it but so much. And so if you've got a lot of speed going and it's not working, you've got to kick a sharp pedal turn and bank that thing to the side to slow it down. Your tail rotor stays level with the main rotor to get that thing stopped. And that was just, you got to learn that from other aircraft commanders. I mean, and then you fine-tuned your own techniques. I mean, we all had our own techniques. And there's one of the medics that belongs to our association. He and I were chatting, and he was telling me he remembers a lot of missions he went with me, and so he just says that, you know, I was the greatest thing since chunky peanut butter. But I mean, I don't remember, you know, much of that. But in any case, yeah, we learned different ways to, you know, coming out of that altitude, that 1,500 feet, get down on ground level. We would do some crazy maneuver just to get out of altitude, to minimize the time. There was not a nice, just lower the collective and just gently come out of the sky. No, there was none of that. You wanted to minimize that exposure to ground small arms fire. And we would do some crazy stuff.
Made you a good pilot, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I got too big of a head that I remember, but I mean, I think I was a pretty good pilot.
You made it back, and you saved a lot of lives, so you were a pretty good pilot.
Must have been. Must have been.
Where can I get your book?
Well, there's a couple of ways that the book is available. One is through my publisher, virtualbookworm.com, all one word, virtualbookworm.com. He's my publisher. He's out of College Station. It lists for $16.95 for the soft cover and $9.99 for the ebook version of the book. And then Amazon is currently carrying it at the same price for both of those. Or if they want a signed copy, then I would be happy to provide one. If I have to mail it, then I'm asking $20.50, and that includes the mailing. So that's what I'm asking. If you want it signed or made out to any particular person, I'm happy to do that. Just send me an email to that email that's there on the screen, and I'll be happy to send one to you. And we talk about payments later.
Okay. And you do a lot of public speaking. You talk to a lot of different groups to share your story.
Yes.
And they can go to your email right here and send you an email, and you can make arrangements to.
Yeah, I've got actually 2 speaking events this week. I've got some in September, October, November. I mean, this fall is quite busy with speaking events, which is good. I mean, I love to go to Rotaries and other civic groups and other nonprofits and go and share the story to get it out there. It's fun to do. I enjoy it.
You do a good job at it too.
Yes, you do.
Well, thank you.
And you were a very good ambassador for Roll Call.
Well, I believe in Roll Call. Roll Call is a phenomenal nonprofit that's serving our veterans in the local area, and I'm trying to get out there and spread the word about Roll Call, and I try to endorse it whenever I have the opportunity. So yeah,
and we dearly, dearly appreciate it.
We're happy to do that. My wife is also quite supportive, as you know.
Yes, I do. She's a wonderful woman too. Have you spoken at the Masonic retirement community? Because I know they're still looking to fill some spots to have speakers come out.
Yeah, Paul Sawyer had me come out there. It's probably been 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
But I did go out there.
Yeah, maybe time to go back. Some new residents.
New residents, maybe it's that. I'll talk to Paul next time I see him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The roll call is the hottest ticket in town.
No doubt. Oh my goodness.
It'd be nice if we could seat 1,500 people because we could sure fill it up.
Yeah, I never
We
wanted
just couldn't afford it.
Yeah, that would be super expensive. But man,
yeah.
oh man, it was full.
It was.
The
But
closest we can get is whenever we have it at NASJRB, and we can get 700 or 800 people there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a great event this last Friday.
It was so nice to honor Jack.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you get, we have several of our guys are 100 or 100 plus, but the last remaining of the original, and I had just connected with Kevin Bolt after not knowing where he was for a couple of years, and I had high hopes as the man who started this thing that we could get him there to be with Jack, but he was just not available. So, but man, Jack really never talked about his story, which is something we love to have more of him do. But to honor him as the last remaining member of the original 15, the very first lunch.
That was something.
Man, sweet man. He's such a sweet man.
He sure is.
And we have another roll call coming up in September. And do you have a speaker for that roll call?
We do. We had him on our show, John Bagwell.
Okay.
So John, the DJ, who also found himself in quite the little firefight. He is going to
the
be
scrawny thing.
Yep. On the 26th of September, he'll be our speaker, and Kelly Krager from the Texas Tech Vietnam Oral History Project is going to work with him and take him through a guided discussion. You know how Kelly does it. Kelly's just so good at it because he knows so much about the Vietnam War because, of course, that's his business to know that. And I know you know Kelly, Doug, so he's just so phenomenal and he's so good at it. And so I couldn't help myself but to ask him, would he be willing to do it? And he said, absolutely. So I've connected him and John. John will be the speaker. And I'm looking forward to that and seeing how folks react, because some of them, don't do the computer. And so they don't watch Hometown Heroes. So they haven't seen his story. So that'll be pretty neat. But that RSVP line will open on the 15th of September. And if you want a seat, you probably should RSVP on the 15th of September, because by the 17th of September, it will be full and I'll have a wait list. And I had over 40 people on a wait list. And I was still clearing people at 9:30 that morning to tell them that I got them a seat if they could still make it. And I was down to about 20. I had cleared over 20 of them off the list.
And the parking's going to be a little dicey that day, too, because they have two events going on at the church.
Yep. So we'll only have half the parking lot. We'll have the I want to say the south. If you were to split it north and south, we'll have the south.
Southwest.
So I encourage people to carpool. Try not to drive alone. Carpool. Meet at the Kroger or wherever else and carpool in.
Now, Doug, you have some speaking engagements tomorrow, don't you?
I do. I'm speaking at the Fort Worth Rotary for their luncheon tomorrow.
Down at is that at the Fort Worth Club?
It's at Ridgely.
Okay. That's close to home.
That's right around the corner.
Very cool.
And then I'm going up to Keller to see the breakfast group that Lewis has for his.
Oh, yeah. At the Keller Senior Center.
Yep.
Lewis Selden, yeah.
Going up there on Wednesday.
You got a busy few days.
Yeah, I do. And that's good. I like being busy.
Well, be sure and take your book.
I try to steer people his direction frequently.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you need a speaker? Here you go. Like, I hope Doug doesn't mind me giving his information out because I give it out frequently.
Well, that's good. I'd love getting out.
Yeah.
Again, call sign Dustoff 34, Doug Peterson's book. You can go to Doug's website, not website, but his email, and get a copy there, and he can sign it. And Mary and I are both proud owners of your book. A very good read.
Mine too, yes. Yes.
Mine is too.
But they can also, so at the September lunch, Doug will be able to sell his books at the September lunch. We think that part of the fireside room is going to be cleared out, and so we'll have some space. And then he'll be able to set up and have his books there. And if people want to buy them and then have them autographed right there, they can do that at the luncheon.
And when I do that, we sell them for $15.
Yep, there you go, folks. Easy, and you get it signed. You need some Christmas presents. You got some family or friends who have an interest in the.
You can shake the author's hand.
I'm telling you, you can get them an autographed book for Christmas. There you go.
Absolutely.
On your Christmas shopping list.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for being on Hometown Heroes today. And Mary, it's been good to be able to. This is the first time we've actually read a book before we had a show. A lot of times people come and they'll give us a book at the show, but we haven't read it. So this was a real treat, Doug. We really appreciate the books. We appreciate your story, and we just appreciate your dedication to telling that story. And
thank you both for the opportunity to do that.
Because you are a great American.
Well, thank you.
And we're honored to call you our friend.
Absolutely.
Well, thank everybody for being part of Hometown Heroes today. And again, Doug Petersen, Dustoff 34. Get his book and you'll enjoy it, I guarantee. Mary, we'll see you a little later. And Doug, we'll see you soon someplace.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
at Black Rifle Saturday.
Probably.
Well, thank you.